Hello, I'm Aisha Williams, and today I will be presenting my research paper number 2, which I am presenting on array indexing and the exploitation of array indexing issues in software. Array indexing is a common software security issue which can allow for vulnerabilities in software if it goes unchecked. Software vulnerabilities hold the risk of being exploited by attackers in order to get the software to react in a negative manner. This may be in ways that the developers did not intend. The exploitation of array indexing by software attackers can have negative impacts on the software and its users. Array indexing issues are common, and many organizations that develop software have run across array indexing issues, such as how Microsoft did with versions of Microsoft Excel and other software that they have released prior to 2011. It is important that software developers and organizations understand array indexing, the risks that are associated with array indexing, and the possible ways to stop and prevent it in order to ensure the overall security of their software. Array indexing issues may occur when balance checking is not enforced and software, becoming a vulnerability that attackers may be able to exploit. According to the CWE, the product uses untrusted input when calculating or using an array index, but the product does not validate, or it may incorrectly validate, the index to ensure that the index references a valid position within the array. Attackers may then use this vulnerability in order to write memory in arbitrary memory locations of the code. Using the array indexing error vulnerability and the lack of balance checking in order to exploit the software, a typical way to be attacked with this sort of error occurs when a user tells you how many elements to expect and isn't allowed to randomly access the array after it is created. This gives the person attempting to exploit the software room to go in and then write in those arbitrary memory locations. It is possible that array indexing issues may cause the software to become exploited, reacting in ways that developers did not intend for it to, as mentioned before. This can cause issues with the software's integrity and confidentiality. This also causes security issues. Array indexing can have many different technical effects, including impacts on the software, includes crash, exit, restart, modify memory, read memory, execute unauthorized codes and commands, and so forth. According to the common weakness and enumeration array, indexing may lead to use of an index that is outside of the bounds of an array, resulting in the corruption of relevant memory and perhaps even instructions, leading to a crash if the values are outside of the valid memory area, causing software to crash. The system functioning with proper values if the memory is corrupted data instead of instructions, as mentioned before. Use of an index that is outside of the bounds of an array can also trigger out-of-bounds read or write operations, or operations on the wrong objects, such as buffer overflows. This may not always be a result. It may also result in exposure of modification of sensitive data. If the memory is accessible by the attacker, it can be effectively controlled and may possibly execute arbitrary code, and possibly without the use of large inputs if a precise index can be controlled. A single fault could allow either an overflow or underflow of the array index. That depends on the type of operation being performed out of bounds, but it can cause and expose sensitive information, which may also cause the system to crash or lead to arbitrary code execution again. In 2011, it was discovered that one of Microsoft's software was subjected to array indexing vulnerabilities. Cisco then released a security advisory in order to warn third-party vendors of this issue. Microsoft, their security advisory stated that Microsoft Excel contains a vulnerability that can allow an unauthenticated remote attacker to execute arbitrary code on a targeted system. The vulnerability is due to improper processing of mail-form documents. An unauthenticated remote attacker can exploit this vulnerability by convincing the user to view a malicious document. When the user views this document, the attacker can execute the arbitrary code within the privileges of the user. This array indexed vulnerability affected multiple versions of Microsoft Excel and other software, including Excel 2002, Excel 2003, 07, and prior versions. Also, Office 2004 for Mac and the overall Microsoft Excel viewer. It also affected the Microsoft Office Compatibility Pack, and Microsoft, after Cisco released this statement, Microsoft did later come out and confirm this vulnerability. They then also released safeguards, encouraging the third-party vendors to implement safeguards, requesting that their users refrain from opening certain emails in order to prevent the attacker from exploiting the array indexing issue until the problem was fixed in the code. They also did later release a code execution update in order to fix this problem. This could have been prevented if Microsoft would have integrated software security prevention tactics into the development of the software in the early stages. It is possible that this may have been prevented altogether. Developers can mitigate software security risks like array indexing in order to prevent the vulnerability from being exploited by attackers. These mitigation methods may include the use of input validation frameworks, developing software and program languages in which array indexing is not as common. Since it is common in C-based languages, maybe they should switch to Java or Ruby languages. Some developers may even choose these methods, such as running and compiling software purposely trying to exploit the array indexing issue in order to gain a better defense and depth insight. This gives them insight on where attackers may choose to exploit the array and memory in order to prevent it from happening. Input validation strategies may also prove to be beneficial when dealing with array indexing and verifying the minimum and maximum range of acceptable input values and reject the input that does not meet the required specifications in order to help prevent the attacker from exploiting the array indexing. Array indexing vulnerabilities can cause damage and security issues for software and its users. Integrating mitigation and prevention methods can also help prevent attackers from array indexing vulnerabilities before to exploit the software. Checking the code, defense and depth, input validation, as well as other methods can help software developers to prevent array indexing and exploitation. The software security problem is common and has been seen by major organizations like Microsoft, as mentioned before. Building secure software is just the key to preventing this from happening. Thank you.